Good afternoon, and welcome to a special Middle East Forum podcast on Israel's recent recognition of Somaliland's independence. My name is Lauri Regan, and on behalf of MEF, I want to wish you all a very happy new year and thank you for your continued support of MEF's work. We have a lot to accomplish in 2026, and MEF will no doubt be a leading contributor to a strong U.S. policy on the critical issues pertaining to U.S. national security in the Middle East, North Africa, and global Islamism. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Ambassador Bashir Goth, who is the Somaliland representative to the United States. He has decades of experience as a journalist, translator, media, and corporate communications advisor and diplomat, and we look forward to hearing his insights on this important and historic event. Ambassador Goth will speak for about 15 minutes, followed by a 15-minute Q&A session. So if you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to use the Q&A or the chat function at the bottom of your screens to enter your submission. We'll do our best to get to as many of your questions as possible, and please do limit submissions to questions only. Today's podcast is being recorded and will be available for future viewing, so please do share the link with those in your network who would be interested in learning more on this important topic. Welcome, Ambassador, and thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lauri, for hosting me, and Happy New Year to you and all your audience, and to the people of Israel and Somaliland. It's actually a great day. Somaliland, this is a historic breakthrough for us, the recognition of Israel. We have been struggling for this for 35 years. And you can imagine 35 years of waiting and patience and persistence and consistency, building our country, our democracy, our elections. We held during that time 10 elections, and we had 6 transfers of power. We prevented terrorism and piracy from our country. A great model for democracy in a very tough neighborhood, and we were just knocking all doors, and everybody was just giving us turning away from us. And at this time, to get the state of Israel to recognize Somaliland is like shattering the glass ceiling. It's a great day, and at the same time, even more than that, you cannot imagine, Dory. For example, Somaliland's case to be discussed in the United Nations Security Council, despite the way it came. Okay, that itself was a great achievement for Somaliland, because for 35 years. Somaliland case was never discussed in any international organization, whether it's the United Nations, the African Union, the Arab League, anywhere. So just to see that Somaliland case was discussed in the United Nations as an outcome of Israeli recognition of Somaliland was a marvelous day for the people of Somaliland. You have seen the celebrations of the people of Somaliland in the streets of the cities of Somaliland. So this is a great day for the people of Somaliland, and I think a great day also for the people of Israel, because we share a lot of history. We both struggle for survival, for democracy, and in Israel and Somaliland for democracy, building, choosing a democratic and free society for our countries, and both of us surrounded by very, very tough and sometimes hostile neighborhood. So the two stories actually echo each other, and it's a very great day for Somaliland, and it's a great way to end the previous year and welcome the year 2026.
Terrific. Thank you for that, Bashir. There's already a number of questions in the queue, but I want to start by just asking you, why do you suppose that there was so much pushback at the UN on Israel's recognition? I mean, especially by EU countries who were all so quick to embrace, the fall of Assad and Syria's new president, al-Shara, as well as the recognition of a non-existent Palestinian state at the UN. So, wouldn't they realize how beneficial to all Western nations it would be for Israel to eventually have a presence at the, a base on the Horn of Africa, positioned strategically to prevent the Houthis from continuing to wreak havoc in the Red Sea, for instance? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I can think about is international organizations are like clubs, and clubs, they always like the status quo. They cannot think outside the box. They cannot read the reality on the ground. They like to be conventional. Okay, so they cannot be unorthodox. They cannot be creative, and I think that's the whole thing. They just like to stay stay with the status quo, and assume everything is just as it happened always. Another thing could be, for example, it's a bit scary for many of the people that a country like Somaliland, a small country in the Horn of Africa, survived 35 years without international help, without having access to international financial institutions, without international aid and assistance, actually, and has become a role model for democracy and free market economy in that kind of a region. So how come that small country, African country, achieved that success story? That could be kind of, well, they cannot do that without our help. They cannot do that without international support. How can they do that? So I think the whole thing is it's a mix of that.
Okay, very interesting. I'm going to sort of take a step back. Somebody asked in the questions, can you please explain the difference between Somalia and Somaliland? So maybe give a little bit of background for our viewers.
Somaliland was a British colony from 1884 to 1960, 26 June, when we became independent. So we became independent on 26 June 1960. The other side, or Somalia, was an Italian colony. And we had two different colonial systems. When we became independent before them, at least 5 days, we have been recognized by almost 30 countries in the United Nations. We got congratulatory cables from the Queen of England, from the United States, from many other countries. And as I mentioned, we have been recognized by 30 countries. Then 5 days after, the other side became independent. So there was a dream in the Somali-speaking people of the Horn of Africa at that time, which was under 5 different locations or regions, like the Italian colonized Somalia, the British Somali Protectorate, and Djibouti, which was the French Somali coast at that time, as well as the Somali region of Ethiopia, and a Somali region in Kenya, which was under British colony. So there was a dream that all these Somali-speaking territories have to unite under one government, one flag, and make greater Somalia. So that was the dream of the people, of our fathers and grandfathers that time. So it was not a bad dream in a way, but it was unrealistic. So the Somaliland and then Somalia started to start that kind of a greater Somalia union, and that's why they merged in 1960, 1st July 1960, the day that the Italian colonized part became independent. But that marriage has become actually a bad marriage from the beginning, because there were two different systems to begin with. The culture itself, or the people's culture, was even different, and then it was the power sharing where it was unfair to Somaliland from the beginning, because the other side has taken the president and the prime minister and all the key ministers, and on top of that, that unification was never ratified by the parliaments of the two countries. It was never ratified, so it was illegal, and that was proven actually by a court, by a military court in Mogadishu. One year after our independence, the Somaliland military officers, most of them were Sandhurst graduates, tried to restore Somaliland independence and tried to make a coup d'etat to reclaim the independence. But it was aborted, and then they were court-martialed in Mogadishu. And they were convicted for national treason. The Somalilanders hired a British lawyer for them, and the British lawyer found that there was no treason because there was no union to begin with. And then they were released. The government accepted that there was no union, and the union was never ratified. So it continued for a while. For the first 9 years, the Somaliland people thought, okay, we have civilian governments, we have some kind of elections, maybe we can continue and maybe things will change. And things never changed. In 1969, there was a coup d'etat by a military government, and then a military dictator who has become a Soviet satellite and took socialism as the system of the country and dictatorship. That continued for almost 29 years. And then the Somaliland people have suffered oppression. And at the end of the day, there was a civil war and a devastating civil war. And the government that time, the military government, has brutally bombarded the Somaliland cities, including the city of Hargeisa, where they killed more than 50,000 people, and sometimes even some reports say more than that. More than 500,000 people have fled the war in the cities of Somaliland and went as refugees to Ethiopia. And with that, the people start to struggle and liberate their country. And then the liberation came in 1991 when the central government collapsed and some other insurgents also started on the other side. And then that's the day the Somaliland people came together for peaceful reconciliation. And then when they settled peace, then they said no more union. And we reclaimed our independence in 1991, 18 May. So coming May 18, we are going to celebrate the 35th anniversary of Somaliland, this time as a recognized country.
And as they say in Israel, mazel tov on that.
Absolutely.
So back to Israel then, and someone has asked this question. What do you think the prospects of Israel building a base in Somaliland to address the threats that are posed in the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, which is where the Houthis have halted movement to Israel via the Red Sea, and other strategic advantages that Israel would acquire by building a base there. And someone has asked actually that there are reports online suggesting that Israel already has constructed a massive military base in Somaliland, which I don't believe is true. But can you address that, please?
Now we have just a declaration of recognition, mutual recognition between the two sides that has been done. We have yet to see, for example, Somaliland president go to Jerusalem as he has been invited by the Israeli prime minister to Jerusalem. And probably when he goes there, there will be an official diplomatic relations will be established between the two countries. But then, as two independent countries with who recognize each other with diplomatic relations, there is nothing that can stop us from having a security cooperation or security pact. And that could mean anything. We could have security cooperation with Israel as two independent states, two sovereign states who have the right to make agreements on all fields.
So I wanted to ask you also about the UAE and where they come into the picture, given that they seem to have developed a presence in southern Yemen. Do you see this presence as possibly playing a role in defeating the Houthis? But also, the UAE recently announced its acceptance of Somaliland passports. Is that in effect the same thing as a step towards recognition by the UAE?
UAE has historical relations with Somaliland and Somaliland people. And since we gained our independence, we had very, very, very good relations with and engagement with the United Arab Emirates. As you may know, Berbera Port, which is a prime port in the Horn of Africa, has been taken over and expanded by DP World. DP World has a concession of 30 years on Berbera Port, and they expanded it and they turned it into a maritime hub for the Horn of Africa and beyond. And Abu Dhabi, as the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, has also a military base in Berbera, and we have strong relations with them also, both economical relations and cultural and political relations and security relations. So that's actually this is the only Arab country that actually dared and had the audacity to spend that much money, $400 million, to expand the port of Berbera and to engage with Somaliland as a kind of an independent entity, and accepted our passports to be used by Somaliland citizens to travel to the United Arab Emirates. And yeah, we have a very good relations with them.
Okay, thank you. It also is it advantage for Israel to do this as a counterbalance to Turkey, which has used Somalia as a base for movement into Africa, and there's rumors that Turkey also uses Somalia for ballistic missile testing. So, where does Turkey play a role in this at all?
I think there is a power struggle or power rivalry on the Horn of Africa. On the Horn of Africa, it has been actually described by a British writer a long time ago as the cockpit of the world, because even during the Cold War, there was a huge power struggle in the Horn of Africa between the and the competing powers at that time, the Soviet bloc and the Freedom Bloc led by the United States. And today, I can see a new power rivalry, a power struggle emerging in the Horn of Africa. On one side is China and Turkey. Turkey actually, they have this kind of, as I see it, and watching it for a long time. Turkey wants to revive the Ottoman Empire, and this is part of their project to revive the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East and the areas that Turkey Ottoman Empire had an influence in the old days. So Turkey almost owns Somalia now. They own the resources. They own all the facilities, important facilities like the airports and the ports. And as you said, they have the largest military base outside Turkey in Somalia, Mogadishu. And as you just mentioned, they have also established a base for their satellites and missiles. So China and Turkey are on one side, and probably some other countries also, like Somalia, which is a failed state, that it's not even a government, without the African Union forces safeguarding and probing the weak government there, it will collapse in a day, just like Afghanistan. So but let's say that Somalia is also one of that, and Djibouti. But facing that or challenging that on the other side is democratic countries like the United States. Israel is now in the region, with the establishing relations with Somaliland and the United Arab Emirates. So I can see these two blocks facing each other in a very strategic, very critical region of the world.
And where do you see the other the Gulf nations, Saudi Arabia? Are there other nations, Arab nations, that you see developing relationships with?
If I look actually from what we have been looking over the last 1 week after the state of Israel's recognition of Somaliland, you can see even Saudi Arabia is becoming like a member of the other side of the other bloc, the Chinese and Turkish bloc. I'm not sure if that's their foreign policy, but it looks like that. But Egypt is already there. Egypt is already with Turkey and China in the Horn of Africa.
Okay. And then someone asked about the prospects of U.S. recognition, but President Trump said he'd have to look into it more. But my guess is that it's more likely that Netanyahu spoke to him prior to making this announcement. And more importantly, once the Trump administration realizes the strategic asset that Somaliland presents, it seems to me like a no-brainer. What are your thoughts on U.S. recognition?
I think, given to the statement of the deputy ambassador of the U.S. Ambassador in the United Nations Security Council, when the United States supported the state of Israel's sovereign right to practice their diplomatic, policy the way they like, and he means that the recognition of Somaliland, that was very encouraging. Number one, that was really, really very encouraging, and supports gives legitimacy to the recognition of Israel to Somaliland. And secondly, President Trump said, "I study everything, and I study hard, and then at the end of the day, I make a good decision." And I hope that he will make a good decision. I'm really sure. I cannot be sure, but I'm very hopeful that the President of the United States will take a right decision on the case of Somaliland, which is the reality, which is it will be on the side of democracy. It will be on the side of the strategic geostrategic importance of Somaliland for a free world like the United States. And already we have very good security relations with the United States. As AFRICOM is already on the ground in Somaliland, they come there, they train our forces, and they visit Somaliland almost every month. Even as Netanyahu was announcing the recognition of Somaliland, the AFRICOM military officers were there in Hargeisa on the ground.
And are there, someone has asked, have any other nations expressed openness to diplomatic relations or at the least consular relations?
I think it's not appropriate for me now to name countries, but yes, we have few countries in the pipeline.
That's good news. What are the relations, someone has asked, between Somaliland and the semi-autonomous region of Puntland?
We have recently signed a cooperation with Puntland. So there is a cooperation between Puntland and Somaliland on counterterrorism, and that's a good thing. And it was the first time that a federal member state of Somalia has actually recognized the right of the people of Somaliland for self-determination, and that was in the agreement. And that's a very, very positive and a very important step forward.
And somebody did ask if Somaliland will join the Abraham Accords. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that, because even when the Abraham Accords were started, 2 years after that, we started approaching and meeting and having discussions with the Abraham Accords. So in a way, we were part or an unofficial member of the Abrahamic Accords. We used to call that, we had a name actually for this, because we were unrecognized country. And then when they asked us, you are not yet a recognized state in the world, how can you join the Abrahamic Accords? And then we said, well, we can call it Abrahamic Accords Plus. So that plus could be Somaliland and any other country which could be which can join that. I got that from OPEC countries, the oil producing countries. They had OPEC and OPEC Plus. Okay, so we were in that plus area, but now we will be fully a member of the Abrahamic Accords, and will come aboard very soon.
It sounds like great news as well. Someone has asked, Islam is the constitutionally established religion of Somaliland. What role does Sharia law play in making government policy?
Islam is the state religion of Somaliland, like any other Muslim country in the world. Okay, it's our religion, it's our faith, and that's true. But the government, the government, and we have also a different other constitution, and the government system, Somaliland democratic government system, and our Islamic Sharia, or it's not Sharia actually, or Islamic faith, they don't contradict each other, and there's no problem with that. We were always democratic. If you look at the history of Somaliland, one of the first writers, historians who wrote about Somaliland during the British days, a gentleman who have become an authority on the history of Somali people, I.M. Lewis. When he wrote the first book about the people of Somaliland, he called it, the title of the book is Pastoral Democracy. And that's who we were all the time. We were Muslim countries, but we were democratic and free country all the time. So there is no contradiction between the two.
I'm going to ask you what your thoughts are on the strategic significance of this recognition by Israel vis-a-vis its conflict with Iran, or its war with Iran. Do you see this providing Israel with further advantages to confront the Islamic Republic of Iran?
That's a grand geopolitics, and that actually will fall under the power struggle going on in the region. And yes, I mean, there are two powers facing each other. One is democratic and free, and against tyranny and terror, and the other side is probably rising dictatorship and hegemony of the region. So we put our lot as Somaliland, okay, on the side of freedom and democracy, and that's where we will stay, and that's where we will have our future with.
Thank you. Someone has asked a question about whether there are any Jews that live in Somaliland and what their status is there.
Well, there are many foreigners in Somaliland, and you can't, it's not written on the face of the people that this the religion of the people are not written on the face of people. Okay, so there could be many Jews in Somaliland as foreigners and holding different passports. But if you go back a little back to the history, we have historical records that the Jewish people had presence in Somaliland for a long time, and they had also in the coastal cities of Berbera and Zayla. And yes, that has been documented and written, and some of the buildings actually that in which some of these Jewish people live are still intact, although they are now kind of in ruins, but they are still there. And I think some of the Israeli journalists who visited this week Somaliland have visited some of these places in Berbera. I saw the pictures on the internet, and they still exist. Yes, and we had these historical relations, and above that, when we became independent in 1960, Israel was the first country that recognized Somaliland. So there's a moral obligation also. And we have also, we share the history of two countries that were born out of trauma. So yes, we share a lot of story with Israel.
Thank you. Bashir, you touched on China, but does Russia play a role in the region? And, either what are the relations between Somaliland and Russia, or Somalia and Russia?
I know they have relations with Somalia, and they have some kind of agreements with Somalia, but they don't have any relations with us, and they have no presence in Somalia.
Are there concerns of nefarious players seeking influence in Somaliland?
Until now, we didn't see anything like that, but we see various actions by China doing. China is actually always interfering in our internal affairs because we have established relations with Taiwan, that like-minded country, a democratic country, and like 5 years ago, like almost now 6 years ago, we established diplomatic relations with Taiwan, and China is not happy about that. And in the beginning, they tried to put pressure on our government. Uh, but that did not work. And then after that, they are actually in full cooperation with Somalia in every field you can imagine, and they are also adamant that Somaliland has to be broken, has to be destroyed, so that they can bring it back to the union. They actually see Somaliland as Taiwan, and as they believe Taiwan is part of China, and they believe in this single China policy, they promote the same kind of thing for Somalia, and they help them in different ways that they can sabotage the independence of Somaliland.
It's very interesting. So we've wound down. We are running out of time, and we've gone through all of the questions of our viewers, and I thank you all for them. They were all excellent questions. Bashir, I can't thank you enough for joining us this afternoon. I know you're traveling, and this is such a timely topic, so we really appreciate you taking the time for us. I want to also remind everybody to please join us this coming Monday, for our next weekly podcast on Canada and Islamism, a warning. And again, I wish everybody a very happy, healthy new year, and look forward to your support for MEF's work and for all of the great work by Bashir. That we're looking forward to watching all good things with Somaliland in the coming year. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Lauri, and thank you to everybody and all your audience, and Happy New Year again for your audience and for the great people of Israel and Somaliland. Thank you very much.
Thank you.